Time now to take a look at some of the best stories in tomorrow's newspapers. Joining me this evening is the radio presenter and broadcaster Mike Reid and the political presentation coach Graham Davies. Very good to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Come to you in just a moment. Let's remind ourselves first of all of what is on the front pages of those newspapers. Starting with The Guardian, it says the government will be forced to make the biggest spending cuts since the 1970s to fill a £45 billion financial black hole. The Times says details have emerged of a fresh Labour raid on the pensions of high earners. The Financial Times says the Chancellor's new 50p income tax rate could drive high-earning talent out of the city. The Mirror leads with a picture of the body parts murder victim who was named tonight as Geoffrey Howe. The Daily Mail claims the government is failing to deal with Britain's drink problem, with 40,000 people dying each year. The Daily Express says Britain, here we come, reporting claims of a French plan to allow thousands of immigrants into the UK. And Britain's Got Talent sensation Susan Boyle's new look is unveiled on the front of the Star, sort of unveiled. There it is in more detail with The Sun, also having the story, saying Britain's Got Talent bosses are furious at her shock makeover. Should we start with the budget instead? I don't know. Let's start with the budget. It's all about black holes, isn't it, tonight?
Well, apparently the Institute for Fiscal Studies, according to The Guardian, have worked out that Alistair Darling can't add up because they reckon that there is a £45 billion hole in public finances, requiring a further tax rise of £1,430 per family.
Yeah, elsewhere reported as a £90 billion black hole, which equals 2,840 for every family, which is what the IFS told us in an interview. So there we are. It's some confusion.
Maybe The Guardian can't add up, I don't know.
In a sense, it doesn't matter because it's just an enormous amount of money for the government, for us, and for every family. And
of course it's allowed the Tories to wheel out campaigning language that they last used successfully in the 1990s, calling it Labour's secret tax bombshell. And of course that's a nice weapon for George Osborne. One of the words that Alistair Darling has been very careful not to mention is the word cut. He's talking about redeployment, constraints, streamlining, efficiencies, but apparently cut is still a dirty word, despite the fact that there are going to have to be some.
Well, it's not our problem, it's a global problem, which is Gordon Brown's favourite word. It's a global problem, of course, yes. And George Osborne calling it a dishonest budget. It is not honest.
Fantasy figures.
I'm not sure what budgets are honest, but obviously they're trying to wriggle around it. But they don't say how departmental budgets will be cut after 2011. So, as far as we know, we're only going up to 2011. There's no plans after that.
Yes, absolutely. They're still spending at least for the next year, because now would be not a good time to cut. After that, according to the IFS report, we are looking at swinging cuts not seen since the 1970s and the Thatcher era as well. So this is what we're talking about now. Going back to the bad old days of no public spending.
No matter what the government is in a year's time or 15 months' time after the next general election, any government will have to have simultaneous tax rises and spending cuts. There's no doubt about that.
So it's ugly if you happen to be a new Prime Minister, i.e. David Cameron might win the next election.
It will be the most poisoned of chalice for any Prime Minister.
And the black hole, we should explain, is because there's been a permanent loss of output. For example, from the financial sector, that means there's a permanent hole in the public finances, which won't simply rely on the end of the recession. So there's a structural gap which will not be filled. That's the point of this. There'll be a permanent loss of output in the UK because of this recession.
Yeah, we'll be in the red till something like 2030 or something like that. 2032. 2032. Yeah. Let's get it right, or beyond. But yeah, I mean, it is, you said, it's a poison chalice. I mean, I can't see David Cameron in the paper the other day as saying he'd like an election on June the 4th, the same day as all the other elections are taking place. But, you know, I can't see why you'd actually want that at the moment.
I can't see him sprinting towards 10 Downing Street.
No, maybe in a year's time. But,
yeah, well, the Guardian's focus is the black hole, the fact there'll be spending cuts and tax rises. The Financial Times is still talking about the higher earners, presumably those who read its paper, lots of those in the city, who are going to be clobbered by this or the exodus.
Well, it talks about the way that they reckon that Brown and Darling have captured a popular mood in attacking the so-called rich. Now, they categorise the rich as being people who are earning more than £100,000 a year. Now, that isn't necessarily everybody's definition, but one accountant from Ernst & Young points out this. There's a quote here. It says, there's a definite sensation of what's next. The message is that high earners are no longer welcome here. suggesting that people are just going to exit.
But high earners often employ other people. This is the main thing. They could employ 50, 100, 200 people, and if those people with factories or companies say, I can't handle this, it's unmanageable, I'm going to close down, then more jobs are lost. So I think it's a dreadful situation.
The clobbering of the higher earners is sort of the feature of the times as well. Top earners hit again in budget rate on pensions. This seems to be that if their employer makes the contribution, they'd get taxed on that as well. So this was, I mean, I suppose, closing a loophole, wasn't it?
Well, you could call it a loophole. On the other hand, often those sort of employee benefits were designed to not exactly take advantage of the system, but to make the most of the system. And really it shows that this is a blanket attack. This is a classic, traditional, red-blooded, old-style Labour budget, just slightly, not exactly soaking the rich, but certainly dampening them quite a lot.
It is. Let's wait till
aren't we, at each other? It's like, what you say? It's
2033. Things will be getting better.
You'll get your pina colada out in 2033, will you, and celebrate the end of this. But anyway, I think...
How will you pay for it?
He'll have saved by then. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to get more of this in the coming days. The details always comes out very gradually, doesn't it, in the budget? So let's move on. Let's talk about Michael Grade. According to the Daily Mail, forced to quit ITV.
Yeah, these people seem to move around at the top. Michael Grade seems to have shift from job to job. I mean, it was Douglas Hurt, wasn't it, his Home Secretary, who was complaining about the deteriorating standards, and he was criticised for shelving Doctor Who, which was subsequently brought back. He was criticised for shoving Pop Quiz, only by me, but which he subsequently did bring back. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, he seems to be taking these wonderful jobs, and you seem to get a good backhander, move on, pop up somewhere else. As I say, we're loath to say anything in case he turns up here, really.
Yeah, short attention span, though, it looks like, with his
CV. He's got a remarkable CV. If he was a
Yes.
football manager, he would have managed AC Milan, Barcelona, Liverpool, and Man United.
And Macclesfield.
I expect so, all in the space of 5 years.
Yes.
But the point being that ITV has really struggled with the downturn in advertising. All the promises he made have not been borne fruit because of the difficult circumstances. In a sense, it's another recession story, isn't it?
It is. The advertising in TV, I mean, there are so many TV channels now that I've never seen it as sustainable, really. Same with radio. 300 radio channels, 300 radio stations. You know, how do you make them pay? How do you make hundreds of TV channels pay? When you look at the channels, they're repeating the same stuff over and over and over again, so the advertisers aren't necessarily going to want to buy advertising. I mean, you have to advertise through the hard times. We know that, you know, Cadbury's advertised through the war, so when it came out of the war, their name is synonymous with chocolate, so you have to keep advertising, but I think it's heading now more towards sponsorship than advertising.
Which is something that he was pushing for, certainly, wasn't it? That's what he wanted. It's the equivalent of walking down the high street, isn't it, and seeing now, as we all see, so many shops that have closed. Let's move on to one woman who's having the time of her life. Susan Boyle, now you are a presentation consultant. Should she have stayed as she was? Can we see this sun picture? Oh, that's... Is that the sun? I thought it was
It
a
is,
star.
yes.
All right, then.
It is the sun.
Well, it's different from my son. That's my son.
Sometimes,
Okay,
as a presentation consultant, I can be deeply cynical. Because somebody said to me, you've got to see the YouTube video. And I thought, oh, well, let's see what it's like. And I was hooked after 2.5 seconds. There's a genuineness about her. There's a sincerity. There's something that's coming genuinely out of her and her heart. And so to actually see that there's quite an expensive makeover process already starting, I feel slightly sad about it. Perhaps it's something that was inevitable, but I think that maybe it just slightly tarnishes her own personal brand.
So she should have left herself as she was, at least for the end of the competition.
That's what I would have advised her to do, yes.
Really?
I think it's part of an ongoing showbiz story. I think this is the next milestone in it, and there'll be more milestones in it. She has got a very good voice. My personal belief is that they knew she had a good voice before she went on there, and I think this is a story there. I think this is an ongoing soap. She has got a good voice, there's no question about that. But when you've got somebody who, makeover or no makeover, should she be number one, not number one? I mean, it's going to roll this.
You're not suggesting that Simon Cowell was cynically manipulating the audience, were you?
I wouldn't have used those words because I've known Simon for too long and I like him enormously. But I would say he's very good at marketing.
Marketing, yes.
I think this is a brilliant marketing ploy. It's terrific and it's done well, and hats off to it.
Well, let's leave it for the moment. We've got loads and loads to pack in, including find out what the recession has pushed up according to the Express. Back with that in just a moment.
Things are going to